This story, I still get chills thinking about it. Honestly, it's not really about a prescription refill or even about one bad cop. It's about that exact, tiny moment when you realize the person trying to break you has absolutely no idea who they just messed with. And trust me, when it happened to Justice Clara Vance, that realization hit like a freight train. And it ended a man's career before the sun even set. You have to understand Clara's life first. She wasn't just some elderly woman. Clara Vance, 68 years old, retired federal judge for the Southern District of Florida. 2 decades on the bench, known for being fair, but absolutely uncompromising. But for the last 6 months, she'd been mostly just Arthur's wife. Arthur, her husband of 42 years, had a massive stroke, and his heart medicationless no prill. 10 milligrams daily it was his lifeline. His cardiologist had drilled it into her. Miss one dose, and the consequences. ... fatal. So, every Tuesday, like clockwork, Clara put on her good navy blazer, the one she wore for courtroom appearances, and drove their Lexus over to the Pillars Pharmacy in Coral Springs. This wasn't some tense, sketchy back alley place. This was Coral Springs, manicured lawns, palm trees, CEOs, and retired judges, you know? She belonged there. She was a fixture. That Tuesday, everything felt normal. She kissed Arthur goodbye, promised him his pills would be waiting by dinner, and headed out. She got in line behind a guy tapping his watch and a mom wrestling a fussy toddler. Just life humming along. Meanwhile, Officer Marcus Thorne, 12 years on the force, was parked outside, nursing a cold coffee and stewing. His lieutenant, Hayes, was writing him hard about the monthly arrest stats. Quotas? They don't call them quotas, but that's exactly what they are. Thorne had 2 petty busts and needed 1 more clean, easy arrest to make his numbers look good. Hayes had specifically mentioned the pharmacy as a potential spot for prescription diversion. Thorne wasn't just patrolling. He was hunting. And when he walked into the Pillars at 2:28 p.m., he saw Clara at the counter. An elderly black woman, reading a prescription label carefully through her cracked reading glasses. In Thorne's mind, molded by 12 years of cutting corners and prejudice, that was a huge, flashing red sign. Drug seekers always study the bottles like that, checking the resale value, right? It was profiling, pure and simple, dressed up as proactive policing. "Excuse me, ma'am." His voice, flat, immediately killed the hum of the busy pharmacy. "I need to speak with you." Clara looked up, startled, clutching the little orange bottle. "Yes, officer. I'm just picking up my husband's heart medication." Thorne stepped closer, leaning in, letting the radio static fill the silence. "Your husband's medication? Or are you planning to sell it? I mean, can you imagine?" Clara, a federal judge, blinked slowly. "Sell it, officer? This is for hypertension." "Why on earth would anyone don't play dumb with me?" Thorne snapped, his voice rising, feeding off the sudden silence of the other customers who were now watching, frozen. "We know what happens here. Elderly people grabbing scripts for other people. It's trafficking. Turn around and put your hands on the counter." Clara didn't panic. That's what's key. She didn't fear him. She was used to dealing with far more volatile people in her courtroom. Her heart was racing, but her voice was rock steady. "Officer, I assure you there's a misunderstanding. I have my husband's insurance, his ID, the medical power of attorney. Everything is legal. Please, check the system." But Thorne was already reaching for the cuffs, the metal clinking against his belt. His partner, Officer Dean, was supposedly on patrol, but we later learned he was waiting outside, keeping watch. Thorne needed this stat. He wasn't going to let an old lady with a polite voice and a nice blazer mess up his paperwork. "You heard me. Hands on the counter. Now." Marcus, the pharmacy manager, a young guy, nervous but decent, stammered, "Sir, Mrs. Vance is a regular. She comes in every month." We've never had Thorne whirled around, pointing a stiff finger right at Marcus. "Step back, sir. You want to join her in cuffs for interfering with a police investigation?" That shut Marcus down. The fear was real, but around them, the phones were coming out. The businessman, the cashier, the young mom, they were all recording the inevitable. "Ma'am, I won't ask again." Thorne grabbed Clara's shoulder, spinning her hard. The prescription bottle flew, pills scattering across the linoleum like little orange beads. Her reading glasses slipped off the chain and cracked against the tile. It was rough, ugly, and entirely unnecessary. "Officer, you are making a serious, career-ending mistake," Clara said, her voice strained by the grip but holding its composure. Thorne laughed a quick, hollow sound. "The only mistake here is yours, Grandma. Should have stayed home." The cuffs snapped shut with a brutal, metallic echo. Clara gasped. It hurt. At 68, those joints protest. But she didn't scream. She endured it, pushing down the humiliation, letting him drag her past the greeting cards, past the stunned onlookers, and out the automatic doors onto the sidewalk, right in front of everyone. As he slammed her into the back seat of the patrol car parked illegally in a handicapped spot, by the wake, Lara felt the plastic seat, the stale smell of sweat and disinfectant, and the crushing weight of institutional injustice. She sat there, shoulders protesting, eyes closed for a second. Thorne got into the driver's seat, adjusting his radio, already composing his arrest narrative. Drug trafficking, resisting obstruction. Clean. He felt vindicated. He had his quota. That's when the shift happened. That is the moment the air changed, and Sergeant Thorne went from being the hunter to the hunted. Clara opened her eyes, watching his profile in the divider grating. Her voice, when it came, was measured, calm, but steel-edged the voice she used when delivering a 20-year sentence. "Officer Thorne," he sighed, annoyed. "Save it for the badge, lady." And she delivered the single 5-word sentence that would rip his life apart. "I am the presiding federal judge." Thorne froze, his hand suspended over the radio dial. "What?" He slowly turned around, studying her face through the metal mesh, seeing the dignity, despite the broken glasses and the cheap handcuffs. "What did you say?" I said, "I am a federal judge, retired from the Southern District. 23 years on the bench." Clara settled back, straightening her spine. "Run my name, officer. Clara M. Vance. Judicial database. You'll find my commission papers, my security clearance, my retirement ceremony." Thorne's hands were shaking as he hit the keys on his dashboard terminal. This was impossible. Judges don't get arrested for high blood pressure pills at CVS. Judges don't sit in the back of his patrol car. But the screen didn't lie. Judge Clara M. Vance, appointed 2001, confirmed unanimously. Presided over thousands of cases. Specialized in, wait for it, law enforcement misconduct and civil rights violations. He stared at the photo younger. Yes, in robes, but unmistakably the same woman. His blood ran ice cold. "I've sentenced 17 police officers during my tenure." "Sergeant Thorne," Clara continued, her voice conversational, almost pitying. "Corruption, excessive force, civil rights violations. I know your type very well. Now, these handcuffs are quite tight. I'd estimate you have about 30 seconds before the crowd outside realizes what you've done. And 47 phones are recording the arrest of a federal judge. By tonight, this will be national news." Thorne stammered. I didn't know. You didn't identify yourself." Clara leaned forward slightly. "I shouldn't have needed to. Every person deserves basic dignity, regardless of their profession. But you chose intimidation, violence, and humiliation instead." He ripped the door open and scrambled out. By the time he fumbled with the key to unlock her cuffs, the crowd was already swelling. The whispering was turning to disgusted shouts, and the damage was done. But Clara wasn't finished. "This isn't over, officer," she murmured, rubbing her bruised wrist. "This is just the beginning." The next few days were a blur. Journalist Lena Ruiz, a sharp investigative reporter, picked up the story after the video went viral. She confirmed Clara's identity and started digging into Thorne's past. The pattern was horrifying but predictable. 12 years, 12 formal complaints, all dismissed or buried. Petty violations, elderly defendants, minority families, always escalated to violence. Thorne was a systemic bully. The APD immediately went into damage control. Lieutenant Hayes put Thorne on paid administrative leave, a slap on the wrist. A vacation while they waited for the noise to die down. But the personal toll was immediate and devastating. That Friday morning, Arthur collapsed in their kitchen. A stress-induced hypertensive crisis. He was rushed to the hospital. Clara sat by his bedside, watching the monitors beep, guilt crushing her. Anonymous threats started pouring in hang-up calls. Someone left a dead rat on their doorstep. The APD's PR machine went into overdrive, painting Clara as an activist judge with anti-police bias. Then came the turning point, the real test of character. Lieutenant Hayes came to the hospital, dressed in his crisp uniform, radiating authority in the cardiac unit. "Judge Vance," he said, placing a manila folder on Arthur's bedside table. "I'm sorry about your husband. We can resolve this quietly. Williams will take an early retirement full pension, clean record. We call the arrest an unfortunate misunderstanding. No admission of wrongdoing. Arthur gets peace and quiet. Everyone moves on." Clara looked at the folder, then at Arthur, whose face was so pale, his hands so fragile in hers. She could protect him. She could stop the nightmare right now. But what about Dorothy Washington, the 71-year-old he threw to the ground 3 years ago? What about the dozen other people he'd terrorized? Arthur stirred, struggling to speak. Only one word came out, slurred, but clear. "Fight." Clara closed the folder, slid it back toward Hayes, and shook her head. "Tell Sergeant Thorne that sometimes justice is about what's right, not just what's practical. This deal is rejected. That decision, choosing justice over personal peace, broke the dam." Lena Ruiz, the reporter, got the break she needed. An anonymous leak from within the APD body cam audio file from Thorne's partner. "Officer Dean," it was crystal clear, recorded 15 minutes before the arrest. Thorne's voice. Target acquired at the Pillars. Elderly black female. Perfect stats padding. Dean's voice. "Copy that. Just make sure the camera malfunctions if things get messy." "Hayes wants clean paperwork on this quota push," Thorne laughing. "Besides, who's going to believe some old black lady over a police officer? The system's rigged in our favor." That laugh. That was the smoking gun. It wasn't just profiling. It was criminal conspiracy, a planned operation to manufacture arrests against vulnerable people. The FBI launched a criminal investigation. The climax was the emergency city council session. The room was packed, cameras everywhere. Clara walked in slowly, but steadily. Arthur on her arm. He insisted on being there. Thorne sat at the defendant's table, pale, terrified. When the audio played Thorne's arrogant, chilling words filling the chamber, you could hear the gasps. Clara stood up, her judicial composure intact, but her voice now ringing with personal indignation. "Sergeant Thorne, you saw an opportunity to abuse power without consequence. You saw someone you thought was powerless." She looked him straight in the eyes. "But power doesn't come from badges or handcuffs. It comes from the truth. And the truth is, you are a bully who hides behind a uniform to terrorize vulnerable people." Thorne's attorney leaned over, whispered, and Thorne, in a voice barely audible, resigned on the spot. But Clara was still standing. "Resignation is not justice," she declared. "This ends when the system changes, not when one officer quits." 6 months later, Arthur is almost back to normal. His speech is clearer, his smile is brighter. Sergeant Thorne is serving 18 months in a federal prison for civil rights violations and conspiracy. Lieutenant Hayes took an early, forced retirement. And the APD? They scrapped the arrest quota system and adopted a policy requiring supervisory sign-off for prescription-related arrests. The dozen victims Thorne preyed on all received significant settlements. Last week, Clara went back to the Pillars. She picked up Arthur's lisinopril. Marcus, the manager, greeted her with a warm smile. No questions, just respect. As she drove away, Arthur squeezed her hand, humming softly to the radio. Sometimes, justice wears a navy blazer and cracked reading glasses. Sometimes it takes the pain of one person to expose the rot in a whole system. And sometimes it just takes one cold, hard sentence to end a career. So, here's my question for you. When you see injustice, Are you prepared to speak those 5 words, whatever they may be? That will cost you everything, but will save everyone else? Let me know in the comments below. What do you think was the most damning part of that audio recording? And what's the one thing that community leaders need to do right now to make sure quotas like that disappear forever? Like this video, share your story, and subscribe for more deep dives into the real battles for justice.